welcome to the Ferndale City Council meeting for Monday, December 18, 2017. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Bart, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Pollica.
Here.
Piana.
Here.
Leaks May.
Here.
Martin.
Here.
Mayor Coulter.
Here. Thank you. We have a full house this evening. Next item of business would be the approval of the agenda.
I move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved by Martin and supported by Leaks May and a nose. Any comments on the agenda this evening? Any corrections? All right. Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Piana.
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Pollica.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The agenda is adopted. We don't have any presentations this evening, so we'll move right to call to audience. This is your opportunity, if you're here with us from the public and you'd like to address council, to address us on any issue that's not on the agenda, because we'll give you a chance to talk about that when we get to that part of the agenda. But if you'd like to come and address council, you have 3 minutes. Give us your name, your address, and come on up. Or Cindy, I could always put you on the presentations, you know. 3 minutes, all right. Good evening.
Good evening, Cindy Wilcock, Ferndale DDA. I just wanted to thank everybody who came out to the Holiday Ice Festival. We had perfect weather. It snowed. It was cold, but not too cold. So the ice sculptures are still hanging out, although the rain is not doing them any favors today. So I just want to thank our sponsors who made it possible: Kreger Plumbing and Sewer Services, Ferndale Mobile, Giffords Webster, Credit Union One, Star Treks, and then the 50 or so businesses that sponsored ice sculptures, because of course we couldn't have an ice festival without ice sculptures. And almost most importantly, I think our volunteers, because we can't do what we do without them. So Michelle, Rick, PJ, Cecile, Amy, Caitlin, Jackie, Blake, Tim, Jen, Michael, Jordan, Chris, Francine, Sandy, Diana, Betty, the team from Ink Addicts, the Ferndale Arts and Cultural Commission, of course, the big man in the red suit.
Yes.
And of course, Ferndale Fire, who gave Santa a ride in. Ferndale Police, who are always on scene and on site at the event. And DPW, who are always my heroes because I always have an issue and they always save me. So again, thanks for everybody that came out. And of course, our volunteer photographers, Art Mize and Larry Mills, who stand out in the cold for a couple hours snapping pictures of everybody. So we're wrapping up the year this Thursday. If you have not finished your shopping, like some of us, it's Merry Moonlight Madness. A lot of the businesses are open late. We'll have the complete list on the DDA Facebook page and website. But the Rust Belt Market will be open. They're not typically open on Thursdays. They'll be open till 7, all the way up through the Hi Hat, who will be open up till midnight, and a bunch of businesses in between. So that's it. Happy holidays, and see you next year.
Happy holidays. Thanks, Cindy. Good evening.
I'm Heather Van Pooker with the Ferndale Housing Commission. I just wanted to share some similar great news with council and the community. Last Wednesday, December 13th, the Ferndale Housing Commission recognized some individuals and some organizations for their generous contributions of time, talents, resources throughout 2017. Most importantly, the way that they treat our residents with such kindness and respect that's really unique today. So we had a great evening with them in the snow. They've all made such a positive difference with their generosity. It really warms our hearts, and I just wanted to recognize them in this forum. Department of Public Works, we specifically recognized Carlos Kennedy and Rocky Cooper and Jason Hobbs, who all went beyond the call of duty throughout the year with spring cleanup efforts and getting our community gardens set up, and just throughout the year doing new signs and just going the extra mile for us. Sal Fumia from Ferndale Foods has generously contributed holiday meals to Withington last year and this year. So we had a beautiful full sit-down meal with all of our residents there just this past Friday, and it was beautiful. Saeed Dino, the pharmacist at Health Choice Pharmacy there within Ferndale Foods, He and his mother have been so generous in sponsoring lunches where they educate about prescription safety and do some other social activities just to get our residents active and connected with one another. He's been incredibly generous. And just by way of anecdote, for example, his care for our residents, he came on a Saturday night before a family wedding to deliver a prescription to a resident in need. I mean, this is the level of care they extend to us. So we gave a big thank you to him. Susan Feeney and her husband John were recognized. They helped in planning our community gardens, which, if you'll recall, we got a community foundation grant for. So they were really helpful in us getting organized in that regard. And she also donated a beautiful piece of artwork to our community room in loving memory of her mother. So that was very welcome to us. Dr. Erin Marie Baker donated some funds that helped us do some outside improvements at Withington that were much needed and well appreciated. And lastly, I wanted to acknowledge Oak Street Health, a newer partner in the community, just opened down in Hazel Park, down 9 Mile. So they're very invested in making sure that our residents are physically healthy and they have good social opportunities as well. So I just wanted to share that and thank them at this forum as well.
Anyone have any questions for Heather? All good news. Thanks for coming by. Anyone else like to address council this evening? All right. Last chance. Seeing no one? All right, we'll move on to a couple of public hearings that we have this evening. The first is a consideration to vacate a portion of the Vester right-of-way. And yes, Jordan, you're going to introduce that item? Excellent.
Good evening, Council. Thanks so much for the introduction. As the Mayor said, this is a request. If you remember way back on November 13th, we had the hearing to have the hearing. And so here we are with the hearing. Essentially, the proposal before us is to vacate.
No one ever said government was efficient.
Right, but at least it's going to have some zippy one-liners now and then. So what we're going to be looking at is a request to vacate Vester Street from Burdette east to the railroad tracks, and you're dealing with two property owners. Standard procedure is, 50% goes to one property owner, 50% goes to the other. All except a tiny sliver of this portion of Vester Street is surrounded by one owner, Search Optics, who has representation here tonight. But also the other owner is a portion, it's the triangular piece of grass at the far east end of their Vester there, which is ITC. So we have been in conversations with ITC, and while they haven't really taken a formal action at this point, they're very supportive of working with both the city and Search Optics on this vacation, and they don't have an interest in owning a piece of public roadway, so they'll either give it to us or give it to Search Optics, but in support of the idea of unifying this area, and Search Optics has really exciting vision for bringing development to this piece of Ferndale, so CED department recommends it. We feel good about it, and I believe you have some updated language in front of you from Attorney Dan Christ with the exact vacation resolution.
Is that correct, Dan? We have the latest?
It is, Your Honor.
Yeah.
One issue as it related to ITC that I had expressed some concern with was the issue of access for that property, and I know that there was some dialogue perhaps with Search Optics to make sure that ITC did have access to that. And I see nodding of head. I assume that is in process regarding preserving that access to that property.
Yes, all three stakeholders are on the same page in terms of that piece of property retaining access, whatever ITC needs to maintain their tower.
All right, so with that, I will open up the public hearing portion of this and ask if there's anyone from the public that would like to address council on the vacation of the Vester right-of-way. Good evening.
Oh, good evening. Paul Collum, 634 East Breckenridge. I just want to say I'm not necessarily in favor of the project or against the project. I just had a couple questions.
Sure.
With the new building and the new office building going up on Vester, how many employees are going to be there? And also how many employees would be at Search Optics in its entirety? I guess my question is, I'm assuming it's going to be some sort of plaza instead of an actual street. So how are you going to access parking for Voyager? Because normally that's how they get into the lot. And then use of the space where the three houses that were vacated and now abandoned, it's now like a little lot, how would they access that if there was ever a need
Now,
to
the-
do that?
great questions, and I don't know which one of you would like to address it. Yeah.
Christian Fuller.
Yeah, hi, Christian.
Mr. Mayor, Council.
Good to see you.
Thank you. Yeah, the idea here is to create a very cohesive campus. That Vester Street kind of drives right down the middle. Right now, Search Optics, we have round numbers about 75 people. The Incubizo, which would be the co-work space, is about 87 if it was fully in full capacity. So parking and things like that are definitely well thought out with about double that available in current configuration. But what we really want to do with this is to be able to get the approval and then build out a kind of a phased approach that would have, like you said, maybe we'd have some mixed use and things like that also with parking that would come in with it.
No, I get my only concern, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
is
go ahead.
in this configuration, the only exit
For Voyager.
to those spots are actually going to be on Rosewood. Because if you wouldn't be able to go down Vester, so the only access to your lot, the house.
Well, it'd be on Burdette.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
Burdette and Rosewood, where you're right behind, just north of your building. That would be the only entrance into those lots. Would that be correct?
Yeah, you'd have 9 Mile to Burdette would probably be the main entrance.
Right.
Through the neighborhood there, I guess if you were going to go back route, that could be a potential.
Okay. I guess my concern is, right now, there's a lot of people that park on the street to go to the restaurant, and I just maybe, if there was some signage saying that, you can park in Search Optics and how to
Yeah.
get back there, and
Well, that's a great point, and that's one of the things we've looked at with the houses that we purchased and that have been vacated, would be, additional parking support directly at Voyager, so that we didn't have to have the spill out onto Burdette, and then curbing and handling sidewalks on Burdette as well would be a part of this project.
my concern is that if they don't know how to get there, that right now they're not going to drive all around your building to go all the way back to those spots. So,
Well, and it
it's
is a great point too, because we really don't want people driving through the back of the parking lot to get to Voyager. So I think good signage would be a great idea, and making sure that Voyager patrons and Incubizo patrons and Search Optics had that.
Just to make a comment to what you're asking about right now is...
Yeah, I'm sorry, but do you mind going to the microphone only because the folks at home can't hear you from over there?
Wanted to help clarify some of it is that in this street, having the right-of-way vacation does not necessarily mean that traffic is not going to be allowed on that street. Right now, where the Voyager entrance goes out onto Vester Street, simply handing it over does not mean that goes away. So there's always going to be access to the parking lot for Voyager.
Okay.
It's not that it's disappearing.
okay, well, then I guess the last time I actually have seen anything sort of related to this was like in that Brownfield report that you did about a year and a half ago, and that seemed to indicate that would just be a plaza with only pedestrian use only, not necessarily vehicle use. And so that's why I'm just trying to get a clarification of.
If something like that were to happen, then the entrance for Voyager would end up having to move, and then we'd be back discussing about that traffic pattern and how that works. It's never meant to make the traffic go all the way back around to come back into Voyager. That traffic pattern will end up still having to go into that parking lot.
Okay, no, I just want some clarification.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address council on this issue tonight? And Paul, I would also encourage you to just keep kind of in contact with Jordan as this project moves forward. He'll be a great resource for you to answer those questions as the project moves forward. So thanks for being here. All right, so that concludes the public hearing. I see no one else that wants to address council on this. So now I would open it up to council for your comments, questions, or motions.
I do have a question. And we've done a few of these now, but I didn't dawn on me till today to ask this question. Who is responsible then for the underground utilities? For example, the sewer pipe currently runs through the center of the street. If we vacate the street, it then becomes their property. Therefore,
I'm sorry, I don't mean to anticipate your question, but there is an easement for public utilities that's reserved in the vacation.
okay,
That's
so
fair.
so the city still becomes responsible for the utilities.
The city, yes, but there's an easement reserved for the public utilities in the vacated, if you proceed forward.
To
in
access
vacated
the
right of way.
utilities.
To access the utilities,
That's
but
right.
they become ownership of. They become responsible for if pipes have to be replaced. They would then become responsible, much like a resident is responsible for the connection between the street and the house.
Those would be public infrastructure, public utilities. The vacation of this right-of-way is subject to an easement for the city to be able to maintain and continue its existing public utilities on the property.
Okay, so they could not build over those utilities.
Right.
No.
Thank you.
Good question. Yep. Other questions or comments?
Through the chair, I just have one. It looks like there's a sidewalk or connector road, between the end of Esther Street and the that goes parallel to the railroad tracks and then dumps into the Ferndale Oil Change Center's parking lot. What is happening to that? Is that remaining?
That's something we're exploring with ITC. One of the things that we're working with them is the exact boundaries of their right-of-way and sort of exactly what access they need. Right now, the only thing preventing that from being used, for example, as a cut-through, is that there's some parking blocks sort of, we'll say, lovingly placed at the end. And that's a situation that, as the vision is fully fleshed out for this site, as we're working with Surge Optics, that's something that may change. But obviously, all of those things, it's sort of, you pull on that thread, and then it all has to be cohesive. So it wouldn't change in a vacuum, but that's something we're going to be looking at with ITC and with Surge Optics.
Through the chair, I keep hearing ITC coming up as far as they're on board, but we don't have any documentation of that. Is there a risk in approving this before we get everything finalized with ITC?
I don't believe so. However, if council felt so compelled, you could put a condition in there noting that we had some kind of formal response from ITC in terms of either giving that interest up or working with the city and the developer.
I guess, Dan Christ is...
Well, I did express that same concern, and normally I had hoped that there might be a written agreement relative to the scope of the access that ITC might wish to maintain or need. So one option would be for council to pass the proposed resolution contingent upon a satisfactory access agreement being provided, copied to the city so that can be reviewed. And I would suggest a time frame on that to occur by so that landlocking of property would not take place.
Gotcha. That seems prudent. And no issue from your perspective?
No, that would be totally fine.
Yeah. All right. Other thoughts, questions, or a motion?
I would move that we approve the vacation of a portion of Vester lot in accordance with the resolution included in the packet provided by city attorney, with the condition that a shared agreement with ITC be completed within 60 days.
Support.
60.
Dan, is that worded correctly for you?
I think that's satisfactory.
Okay.
I certainly understand the intent of the motion.
All right. So moved by Martin and supported by Polika. Yep. Any comments on the motion? All right, Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Leaks May,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Piana,
Yes.
Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Thank you, sir. Our next public hearing is a consideration to vacate a portion of the Planavon West Breckenridge Alley. And Jordan, you want to introduce that item?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mayor, Council. So this one's a little bit different of a circumstance. Essentially, you're looking at a public alley that's bounded by West Breck to the north, Planavon to the east, Withington to the south, and a previously vacated alley to the west. The situation here is this is adjacent to it's part of a condo development's parking lot. It was actually previously believed to be vacated, and we ended up finding out that it wasn't. There was sort of a series of unfortunate events that unfolded with this condo development. There was a repair that was done. The contractor had a passing in the company, which led to the company's dissolution, and they went to go make a claim, and we found out that the alley had never been vacated. So we engaged the condo development. Actually, the clerk's office was a huge help in kind of helping shepherd this through the process. The residents in the condo development, if you saw on the item, there was a petition circulated to get some interest in being sort of willing to take over the alley and maintain it. So the CED department recommends moving forward on this, to partner with the residents there to make sure they can get this addressed.
So with that introduction, I will open up the public hearing now and ask if there's anyone from the public that would like to address council on the vacation of this property, the West Breckenridge Withington Alley, to be specific. Anyone here would like to address council? All right. Then I'll close the public hearing and I'll open it up to council for your questions or comments. Kind of a no-brainer. Oops. Thought it was vacated. Act like it's vacated. Let's vacate it, right? That's
There you go.
Okay.
Is that a motion?
That's not a motion, but I would accept a motion.
I move that Ferndale City Council, after notice and holding of a public hearing on December 18th, 2017, resolves to approve and adopt the submitted resolution to vacate the portions of the alley described as the block bounded by West Breckenridge Ave to the north, Planavon to the east, Wessington to the south, and previously vacated alley segment to the west.
Support.
So moved by Piana and supported by Polika. Now, final discussion, comments, or questions? Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Martin,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Piana,
Yes.
Leaks May,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted. Thank you, Jordan. Moving now to the consent agenda. The consent agenda are items that we enact in one motion unless council removes something from the consent agenda. There'll still be time for discussion on these items after they're read, which I will do now. Item A is the approval of the minutes of the regular and special meetings of November 27, 2017. Item B is the approval of Passport Parking Software Services Agreement. Item C is the approval of Q&M contract for Strategic Industry Attraction Campaign Development, as submitted by the Community and Economic Development Director. Item D is the approval of the RTA Paperless Garage and Software Agreements. Item E is the approval of parkferndale.com website design update. Item F is the approval of the scope of services with CBRE for a cost not to exceed $20,000 to be paid from the Auto Parking Fund. Account number as noted. Item G is the approval of the 2018 meeting date as submitted by the city clerk, and you should have a revised copy at your table and online. Item H is the approval of purchase of a 100-year anniversary commemorative badges for the police department. Item I is the approval to pay the Valley Truck invoice for the emergency repair of Vehicle 1256 in the amount of $3,900 to be taken from the motor pool account as noted. And finally, item J is the approval of the bills and payroll as submitted by the City Manager's Office and, as usual, subject to review by the Council Finance Committee. What is Council's pleasure on the consent agenda this evening?
Go ahead, please.
I move that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Support.
Moved by Leaks May and supported by Polika. Now, any discussion? And I think, Joe, you were going to highlight one of those items, correct?
Yes, Mayor and Council, I wanted to highlight, I believe, it's item number
B. Item B. The passport parking
B, the
software
passport
services
parking,
agreement.
yeah.
Yes.
I wanted to highlight passport parking. We have members of passport parking in the audience tonight, and they had a brief presentation. They just wanted to use this opportunity to introduce themselves to the community. And I can just preface this really quick. In the fall, we went out to bid for parking citation services ostensibly, but we saw an opportunity to bridge 3 disparate parking services under one house. So we had a need to update our citations and enforcement services, which were formerly provided by Oakland County. Oakland County was no longer going to support those services, so we wanted to bring that up to date and find a new solution. At the same time, we saw an opportunity to update the way we provide permitting to downtown businesses. Right now, it was currently just through paper permits, and they weren't connected to any system. So when we enforced them, it was through a paper process. It was connected to no database, and we did not provide any online system. And then we had mobile payments, which were also not connected to any other enforcement system.
Which payments, I'm sorry?
Mobile payments, which were provided by Park Mobile. They were not connected to any other system as well. So that was an independent system. Since we had to go out to bid for citations and enforcement, we saw an opportunity to bring everything together under one umbrella. So we went out to bid and asked service providers to provide just that, everything under one umbrella. And so bringing that under one umbrella, we had a cross-panel interview several companies that consisted of the DDA, several different departments in the court and the police department. And one came out as a unanimous winner. One was Passport Parking. And Passport is here today to just introduce themselves to City Council and the community about who they are and a little bit about each of their solutions, platforms for citations, digital permitting for businesses, and mobile pay.
Excellent.
And with that, here's Tom from Passport.
Well, good evening. Welcome.
Good evening. So as Joe mentioned, my name's Tom Weesey. I'm coming in from North Carolina, where we're headquartered. I just wanted to walk you through a little bit of what you're going to be seeing over the coming months. It will take about 2 to 3 months to implement everything, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about who we are as a company. So as a company, we have over 400 clients across the nation. We have them in Canada. We're just moving into Mexico and England as well. But closer to home, we work with the city of Detroit, the city of Ann Arbor, city of Flint. On the west side of the state, we work with the city of St. Joseph, and constantly holding meetings throughout the state. But as I mentioned, we have 400 clients. We process $200 million annually. It's ever increasing. And then we have a reach of about 3 million active users. So then jumping into the product set that Joe mentioned, the beauty of all of this is it's all housed with a single back-end service that uses web-based applications, so there's no requirement for hosting, no additional cost to the city. So on the far left, what you see is the mobile pay application. That's where you can pay for a meter in a parking lot or on street using your cell phone. There are notifications as a part of it. It increases the amount of communication the parking department can have with the residents that are parking. The middle functionality is a digital permitting platform, which allows for residents and employers to issue permits. It's a license plate-based system. It's very eco-friendly, doesn't use any type of hang tag that's distributed or anything of that nature. It's digitally based, using the individual's license plate as the identifier. And then on the far right, you're seeing the citation management software. It uses a Bluetooth printer, and it runs on Android phone just to be economical and efficient if anything does happen to the hardware. So finally, just want to hit on a few of the key benefits. The first is we are providing a private label application. The name has yet to be determined, but typically it has Park in it just to help people understand what they are doing with it. But the beauty of that, what it does is it allows, again, increased communication. It allows for increased merchant validation, which we're seeing as a second piece. Merchants can actually distribute codes, which can be used to discount parking for individuals. And then we have a closed-loop wallet as well. So the idea behind this is to save merchant processing costs for the city. These are largely credit card transactions, which do come with a fee. So with a closed-loop wallet, the city holds the funds, and the city reduces their merchant processing costs with that. And then finally, as we've hit on a few times, we are a single source provider of all of these items.
So any questions of council?
I do, through the chair. So I saw the terms of the contract in the packet, but what other capital costs are associated with this switchover, Joe?
Other capital costs really are little because they're web-based. We already operate on an Android system. So they'll just continue to use the smartphones that they have. We'll actually be reducing the amount of capital based on what they're currently enforcing with. So parking enforcement officers will be using less equipment. We'll be leveraging the smartphones that they're already using, and they'll just be.
So all of the zone signs, none of that changes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. So I'm sorry. We will be redoing signs once we roll out the mobile pay, which would be later in the summer. That'll be the last piece of the rollout.
And Passport is covering the signage as a part of the overall contract.
And with the new system, I understand it's license plate based. Is this going to turn us into like Detroit does, where you have to enter your license plate to pay for parking?
No, we're still space oriented.
Thank God. All right. I really just like that system.
No, from the digital permitting, it allows you to sell permits associated with license plates.
All right. Thank you. That's all I have.
Other questions?
Yes, I do. Oh, go ahead.
You go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Will we have more of a transition plan presented to us since adopting the first service, Park Mobile, was fairly traumatic?
That's not public. No, that's behind the scenes.
That's behind the scenes? But
Right.
because if you have an app, right, Park Detroit has their own app, and so are we switching apps? I guess I'm confused.
That's what a private label application. Can you go into a little bit about
So
private label
we're
applications?
asking customers who usually Park Mobile to download a new app and switch.
Yes.
That's my understanding.
Is that right? Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct. What I would say is we've done this over 26 times across the nation. The idea behind this is to increase the utilization of this application, and the way we're going to do that is by creating more of a Ferndale-specific application. So there's a bunch of construction happening all over the place. If the parking department wants to communicate that a certain lot is going to be down due to the construction, they have the ability to now directly communicate with those individuals that have been parking in a specific lot. So while there is a transition from an application, I would say, number one, we are very experienced in that. And then two, the application that they will be receiving actually has numerous increased benefits above and beyond the current provider at a lower cost.
So, through the chair,
Yeah.
if I say, I'm really impressed with the functionality of your service, and I agree that having it all under one umbrella is actually going to allow the city provide better service to our customers parking in our community. What I'm concerned about, which isn't here, which is second stage after we approve this contract to you. When I say adopting a new parking system was traumatic, it was traumatic for everybody. And so what I'm looking for is a non-traumatic transition plan where we don't turn this on in the middle of winter.
Right. So the intent is to not turn that on in the middle of winter. So this,
among other things.
this will be incorporated into the communications plan as part of the project. But also, it's not to be determined when that portion of the project will be launched yet. That's TBD. The first priority is to replace citations and enforcement, because that is the application that's no longer supported by Oakland County.
Okay.
So for our purposes, for the first 60 to 90 days, our focus is digital permitting and citation and enforcement. Once we get those two pieces launched, we can move on and have that discussion about mobile payments. In the meantime, our Park Mobile system is still in place, and that can remain in place. That doesn't go away. We are still on our system remains in place with them. That can just remain in place, and we can have that conversation once we focus on launching permitting and enforcement with Passport. Then we can talk about a transition plan, and we will have that concurrent to the.
Okay.
If I may, just to support the Mayor Pro Tem's comments, though, this feels a little cart before the horse, to be honest with you. This feels like a really major change to put on a consent agenda, to be honest with you, without a big transition plan. A lot of us still have scars from the last time we did this. So I understand the reasoning for it, and I actually really like the product. I agree. But this feels not ready for prime time, I guess, is what I would say. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, no, I just agree with the direction this is going. My concern is that I want to know how we're going to be introducing this to the public, and how the person that comes once every 3 or 4 weeks to Ferndale all of a sudden doesn't start using Park Mobile and enter in information only to find that they're paying for parking that doesn't support it anymore.
So I guess with that comment. My question is, and what I heard from you, and I'm going to restate what I heard, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that this is phase one, and phase one is adopting Passport for internal operations only, and then there's a phase two where it would be adopted for external customers. Is that correct?
That would be correct. The Passport does encompass the three pieces of application. The first two pieces are critical to internal operations. The third piece is public-facing mobile pay application. The third piece is the final piece of the transition to Passport parking.
Right. But,
if I may, the agreement in front of us doesn't indicate that. That you're asking us to approve. I'd feel more comfortable.
That's an internal project implementation, and
well,
I could have included that in my cover letter, sure.
But what I'm hearing you say is you prefer to just to approve the two portions that are behind the scenes tonight, correct? That was what the intention was just the two behind the scenes, so you don't have to approve moving forward with moving off of Park Mobile publicly tonight if you don't want to, correct? Or do they have to do it all?
well, we don't have, is this quote for the whole shebang?
yes.
I'm using my technical words, shebang?
Yes, according to what we're asked to approve tonight, it is.
For 18,
It's 20 cents per, and then 9,000 per tier.
yeah, without a transition plan.
Right.
Well, can that be part of the motion? Can we make that part of the motion saying that we'll approve it with the understanding that prior to implementing phase two, there will be a formal presentation with a plan presented in public forum of how we're going to move off of Park Mobile onto this new system.
Yeah, through the chair, I think step one would be to remove it from consent. Because as it stands right now in consent, you can't make those modifications. And then, yeah, we could modify a motion to address the concerns. Sorry.
And then just to throw another wrinkle into this our discussion, council a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago or so, passed a resolution. And I'm trying to remember, I think it was broader than travel. I think it was engaging in vendors and purchases from companies that do business in North Carolina as a result of the infamous bathroom bill. Now, I realize that the bathroom bill has now been repealed and that many communities and folks that took that action have repealed them. We have not officially done that or had that discussion. So technically, we are still under our own prohibition of engaging in a contract with a firm from North Carolina until we at least have that conversation.
I just want to be clear.
Just remember that.
We are registered in Delaware with an office
that's
in North
helpful.
Carolina.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
What company isn't registered?
All right.
What
Very
company
good.
isn't registered in Delaware?
Well, that's right. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Then that clears up one wrinkle. Although, please note, Dan, I'm looking at Dan. I'm not sure that it does because whether you're.
We found it.
You found it?
He said you could change the dice if you want, so we're looking.
I mean, you council could have the discussion
But do we need to, given that?
Well,
how does the ordinance read?
I need to see the resolution, whether it says principal place of business or place of incorporation. It could say both.
Okay. So I don't mind doing all this here tonight, but I do have a question, which is, given the previous conversation and this issue, is there a timing issue other than you might, and you don't have to come all the way back for the next one, but for us to take this up in January, is there a timeline that we're going to hit up against that's going to cause problems?
From an internal staffing perspective, the only timeline is we need to move forward on the enforcement citations and permitting solution. The mobile pay, from a staffing perspective, we weren't planning to operationalize that anytime soon without thinking forward to communications and communicating that, an actual communications plan. Our focus has been on implementing and operationalizing the enforcement citations.
Right.
Because Oakland County is no longer supporting.
Right. Through the chair, I guess but this is with the intent to transition. And I guess that's where this is a long-term partnership that we're agreeing to go and to shift. And so I think
Considered a resolution before.
the heart and soul of that isn't coming through this resolution, and I hear what you're saying, and you're actually cheaper, and our parking customers will save money each transaction. So this is a good deal all
Yeah.
around, and so,
I am more than comfortable with adding any delay motion language for mobile pay.
okay.
Yeah, but I think we still have the issue.
Well, we
of
still have the issue of
North Carolina.
possibly, I don't know, pull that up.
I'm looking.
One other quick question on the mobile pay, although that will be phase two. Would we have the ability to brand our app locally?
Yeah, yeah,
I like that.
Park Ferndale?
yeah. Well,
Something.
Well, I'll start out by making a motion that we remove this from the consent agenda.
I support that.
All right.
as item
And we'll add it to the regular agenda.
to the regular,
Um,
A?
But I'm going to add it as
Yeah,
before
I would add it
A,
as
so
A.
that
Before A.
they don't have to wait until the end of the regular agenda. And this will give us time to pull up that one.
I know, I keep
And talk
seeing
about
it.
the rest of the consent agenda. So hang tight, we'll be back with you. So now the consent agenda has been amended to remove item B to the regular agenda.
I would move that we approve the consent agenda less item B.
But we've already
Wait,
got
you-
we've
you
already got a
already done
motion.
the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So is there discussion on any other part of the consent agenda? All right, Barb, would you call it the roll on the rest of the consent agenda?
Yes.
Mine is item B.
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Piana,
Yes.
Leaks May,
Yes.
Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. The consent agenda as amended has passed. Do you guys want me to take up the FACC appointment?
Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
still.
Why don't we do, item A is the approval of the appointment to the Ferndale Area,
Arts and Culture Commission.
Arts and Culture Commission of Aaron Gonzalez. Aaron, is Aaron here, by the way? Aaron, there you are. Come on up and introduce yourself. Thank you, sir. Welcome.
Council.
Just briefly introduce yourself and what your interest in serving.
My name is Aaron Gonzalez. I'm originally from Seattle, but spent the last 15 years in California, in the Bay Area. I have my degree in theater arts from University of California, Santa Cruz. I also have worked intimately with the Santa Cruz Tannery Arts Center, which is low-income housing and studio for artists in Santa Cruz, California. So my interest is to bring my skill sets as a theater historian and community activist to the area of Ferndale and the Detroit metro area.
Wow. Well, we really appreciate it. Does anyone have any questions?
No, I would just like to add that through our discussion with the chair of the Arts Commission, Mr. Gonzalez comes highly recommended.
Appreciate it. Thank you. All right. Any other questions or comments? Excellent. Barb, would you call the roll, please?
We have to make a motion.
Oh, we do need a motion. That would be helpful.
I would move that we appoint Aaron Gonzalez to the Ferndale Arts and Cultural Commission
For a term ending.
for a term, I'm looking for it. Well, that's motor pool. When does the term end?
December 31st, 2019.
For the term ending December 31st, 2019. With the
Support.
With the assist. Thank you.
Awesome. So moved by Martin, supported by Polika,
All the way through.
right on through. Any further discussion? All right. Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Councilmembers Piana,
Yes.
Leaks May,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
and Mayor Coulter.
Yes. Thank you, and good luck, and thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it, Aaron. All right. City manager, I'll
I'm
give you more time if you
just
like.
keep going.
All right,
Just
we'll keep
we can
going.
wait.
Item C is the approval, I'm
B.
sorry, item B is the consideration of request from Brooks Brewing for the new microbrewery and small wine maker license to be located at 22925 Woodward. You're back, sir. Hasn't been all that long. But who's going to introduce this item from staff? If you don't mind, I mean, we're familiar with this item, obviously, but
We've got too many items on the agenda already. Well, Mick already left us. I think we're okay. So, this item
we
here...
don't pay you by the item, by the way.
That's
so-
right. I know. That's tried to hide under the clerk's header. So this essentially is the final stop on the train for the Brooks Brewing project, which they've been through Planning Commission. They were approved by council as well for the use, the special land use, and the payment in lieu of parking application. So now this is for the the microbrewer and small winemaker license to be located at 22925 Woodward, which is near Treat Dreams. There, it'll be a really great addition to that space. The details are in your packet, but I can answer any questions you have on that, but I may lean on the expertise of the clerks if you stump me.
All right. Okay. And anything further that you would like to say, sir, since you're...
It's just a formality that the state of Michigan requires for us to start the committee process. So
Sure.
fill the form out, enrollment is good to make about that.
Any questions of council?
I have a question for April. Is there a reason why this doesn't show up at the Liquor Review Committee?
I do not believe breweries do.
That I would defer to the clerks. In terms of this not going before Liquor Review Committee, I apologize.
Brewery
That's
doesn't.
true. I would, through the chair, brew licenses and small winemakers are not included in the council resolution or ordinance regarding the review committee that council's set up.
Thank you.
Chief, that's what you were going to confirm?
I was going to confirm.
All right.
I knew that answer, just saying. Not many answers I know tonight, but I know that one.
So not to put anyone on the spot, but why? I mean, what is the distinction?
That I do not know, so I'm going to defer back to you.
And if you don't know, that's fine. I realize I'm putting you on the spot. I know that's a long-standing policy, but
It was deemed a different type of use where it's there's specific quantities that are different from a local Class C license establishment as it relates to the amount of, I think it's 60,000 for all of the up to 3 locations that can be 60,000 barrels, which is a big number. But that was the background with respect to the deliberations of council on that issue and in treating both brew pubs and microbrewers and small wine makers different than the treatment for Class C establishments.
I see that you stood, Chief. I don't know if you want to add anything to that. But given the proliferation of these kinds, I'm just wondering if going forward that's, it's really just a curiosity question of whether that distinction continues to be.
This is one of the licenses that that we have very limited. They can apply through the state. We have very limited say in one of these licenses.
So even if we did review
Actually, Mr. Chair, I don't believe law enforcement reviews.
We don't have the ability to review.
To review any at all.
Wow.
Our liquor laws
I'm not
are
sure I like that.
Yeah. All right.
I don't like it, but I play by the rules.
Right. We know you do. Thank you. Yikes. Whoa. All right. Any other questions? Any other questions?
I'll move that we recommend to the Michigan Liquor Control Commission approval of the request for Brooks Brewing LLC for a new microbrewer and small winemaker's license to be located at 22925 Woodward Avenue, Ferndale, Oakland County, Michigan.
Can you email
Support.
that to me?
All right. Moved by Martin and supported by Polika. Any other comments or questions?
Shall be effective immediately.
I'd ask Barb to call the roll, but I think
Okay,
she's busy.
Attorney Chris, I have it.
Barb, would you call the roll, please?
You bet.
And I don't mind, by the way, taking a 5-minute
No, I know. We have an
break
answer on
if
that.
we need to. That's perfectly fine. Okay, Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Council members Martin,
Yes.
Polika,
Yes.
Piana,
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes.
Mayor Coulter.
Yes, thank you. That item is adopted.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Good to see you again. All right. So do you want to move back to that item?
We're happy to, Mayor, if
Okay.
you're ready on that.
We are. So we'll go back to what was previously consent agenda item B, which we'll now call regular agenda item B1 or 2 or something.
And Mayor, before we go back into the substantive issue of the proposal,
Yes.
The issue you had raised regarding council's resolution April 25th of 2016 was principally focused, and I don't have it right in front of me, but the city clerk had a copy that I was able to view, was regarding funds concerned with travel to North Carolina.
Okay.
It also did have a automatic it indicated that the resolution was in effect until such time as what was the House bill, Barb? The North Carolina,
I knew you'd ask that.
until
After I
it was
just
repealed,
closed
and it's my understanding it has been repealed.
It has, and that's what I seem to recall was it was a travel ban versus a ban to enter into contracts, but I couldn't remember. So in that case.
So that is not an issue, so the other
is not an
issues are
issue.
certainly,
Because that bill, I don't know the number of it, but.
HB 1523 for Mississippi and HB 2 for North Carolina.
Yeah, which, by the way, just so staff knows, I don't think Mississippi has repealed there. So in case you're out there working with companies from Mississippi, I don't think we're there yet. Okay, so good. Thank you for clearing that up. Now, back to the original discussion. Yes, about a phased approach. So what would that look like? Can we do?
Well, if I recall, our assistant city manager said yes, that they're going to propose phase 2 when they deem it even ready, which may be a year,
At least.
a year from now, or if not more. So,
But requires no modification of the current resolution before us?
I'll have to defer that to Joe. If we delay, that doesn't change.
I am comfortable with motion language requiring me to come back for
launching
a phase 2 prior to a phase 2 approach.
Well, we discussed phase 2, but is there anything that's in here that says phase 2? Because if we put that phase 2 in the motion.
If you just change phase 2 to mobile pay before the launch of mobile pay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And define the mobile pay.
Dan, did that make sense for you, or how would you like to see us word that? We want to do this legally, so you don't have to come back.
mobile pay is how Joe's referring to it as?
Mobile pay, how is it referred to in the agreement?
It should be referred to as mobile pay, yes.
And when would the expectation be that would be coming back to council?
I wouldn't envision it prior. We would not do it before July 1.
Would it be simpler, through the chair, if we just approve a motion that authorizes Joe to move forward with citations only? And then anything else has to come back to us at that point? Right, that's your immediate need.
And digital permitting.
And digital permitting.
And digital permitting.
Is that going to be an issue for you?
I guess, does it modify the contract that we're
That doesn't modify.
approving?
No, because it just lists right, it's a fee schedule there for a service we're not authorizing.
Yeah, well, through the chair, I'm okay with approving the whole contract because the intent is to go in a partnership, and if we're all in, we're all in. But I because there's only 20 cents on here as an item that is for, what's it called? Mobile pay. So overall, the 18,000 covers the cost of the services for what the assistant city manager is requesting for. So I feel like anything above and beyond that, other than per use fee, right, for the 20 cents?
Pay for transaction.
Pay for transaction, right, would be the communications plan and any external costs that may come with it for marketing, print, and whatever transition, right? Which is something that Passport Parking has indicated you'll cover to some degree, right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
No, I agree with the intent. It just makes me nervous. I mean, I don't know. It's not the lack of trust. I feel like we're approving a contract with a whole bunch of addendums that aren't documented. Or not a contract, but an agreement with a whole bunch of addendums that aren't documented.
And I'm fine deferring till January too, to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Well, through the chair, I think that's the better alternative. If there are going to be changes to the agreement, to table this to a meeting in January so those changes can be reflected in the document and you have an opportunity to see them.
Yeah, as long as our vendor understands it's in no way trying to communicate an unwillingness to do business with you.
Right. Absolutely.
We've just got some battle scars, and we want to make sure we do things right.
We have all that information very well documented, so we'd be happy to provide what we've done in prior scenarios and all that.
I don't want to start a partnership on a sour note. I want to make sure we're together.
Is that
So I just
council's
wanna-
interest to table, or, no, go ahead.
So then we will not be approving the mobile citations and digital permits that Joe can move forward with that.
I think the idea is potentially is to table
Leave
this until
everything?
January.
Leave the whole thing?
January.
Okay.
And bring it to January to start and
First-
approve it
first
first
meeting
meeting
in
in January.
So 8th. Okay.
Table till January 8th?
They're okay with him not
Yep.
That doesn't cause a hardship.
Yeah, and we're okay with you, I think. I am with you don't need to fly back in for that.
We'd be happy to.
Could Skype you in or something.
Detroit in January is just not that exciting.
Detroit in December isn't that great either.
All right. So we don't need a motion. Do we need a motion to do that? No, we can just table.
No.
Well, if there's no motion, it dies for lack of support, or you could.
There is no motion. So we'll hold that over. The intent is to hold this over to the first meeting in January. All right. Thank you, gentlemen, for being
Thank you.
here. We
That
look
makes me more
forward to
comfortable.
getting this done in
Thank you very
next
much.
month. Thank you. All right. Now moving back to the regular agenda, item C is the approval of the inclusive housing policy. Jordan, you should get extra pay for this one, but
Well, this was definitely a team lift, Mayor, and I'm actually really excited to bring this one forward. We know it's been something on the radar for a long time, both for council and for our department. I do want to thank Heather Van Pooker with the Housing Commission, provided a lot of input on this, and this is one of the big ways that our department sees not only kind of achieving the master plan, but really deepening our partnership with the Ferndale Housing Commission, their strategic plan, the direction they're trying to go, and being proactive in all things housing. We think this kind of falls in line with that. And you have the details in your packet, so I'm going to sum up some highlights, but also, speaking of the team lift, Attorney Dan Christ really helped us kind of iron through some of these proposals, and so there's a couple changes that I want to put in front of you to consider that Dan worked on with us that would go as part of this policy. But the one thing I want to back up and just point out that, again, this is a start. The intent here with this is to plant a flag and allow us to have some enforceable guidelines that we can use with the current development proposals in the pipeline. Things like the Hayes Lemmer site. We've talked about affordable housing with some of the other mid-rise proposals that have been looked at over the past year. All the developers that we've talked to, the project on the city-owned property on Livernois, for example, have been willing to incorporate affordable housing based on our negotiations. However, we like the idea of having things in writing that are enforceable. So that's what this is today. And then phase 2 would be engaging housing experts to further refine this policy as needed, but also help us set metrics. So what does affordability mean? What are the targets year to year that we're trying to achieve? And we actually have an opportunity through the MEDC to get some technical assistance. Because we are RRC certified, we can get up to $20,000 to support that activity. So we're really excited about that as well. Kind of walking through there, the big pieces that this policy contains are the AMI standards, set-asides required for new units in new construction projects that provide a mix of incomes. So you'll look there, you'll see that essentially you'd be looking at for projects that are 25 units or larger, you'd have to set aside 25% of those units or pay in lieu. And I'll come back to that concept in a moment. But assuming that you were going to meet them all on site, you would have 10% of those units equal to or less than 80% of the area median income. And you can see in your packet that is just shy of $45,000 a year. 10% of the units would be equal or less to, or equal to or less than 60% AMI, which is just about $34,000 a year. Then 5% would be at 50% AMI, which is just over $28,000. The goal here, and this was another thing that was kind of shaped in part with conversations with the Housing Commission, where their housing stock just sort of it naturally falls sort of the lower end of the AMI, the 30% and below. So we wanted to kind of encourage a mix of housing incomes as well. So that's sort of where we aimed the new unit set-asides. One point of input that Attorney Christ kind of brought up that we agree with in CED was if you were to look at that minimum project at 25, it kind of gives you 6-point-something units, so 6.25. So CED, we're big fans of affordable housing, so we think that's an opportunity to round up and call it an even 7. Or you can take a look at, you can lower the threshold and say 20 units. And then you would always have sort of an even number. We think that rounding to 7 strikes a more even balance. One of the things that we also got, stakeholder groups we got input from were developers. While we wanted to make sure we got voices from all stakeholders that would be affected by this, and so setting these policies does create ripple effects in what you can actually build. So we felt that 25 was a healthy number that sort of pushed the envelope a little bit on the development side, but didn't make a project impossible to build. And impossible to finance. So that's kind of where we landed. We would recommend, per the attorney's observations, rounding that to 7. So you'd say 25% and a minimum of 7 units.
So just renting the back bedroom wouldn't cut it?
Right, okay. Exactly. That would actually be horrible from a best practice standpoint. But that's for another conversation.
Yeah.
So the payment in lieu piece, which is the other second piece of this, essentially this is conceptual, but also based on precedent. One city that we looked at closely was the city of Boulder, Colorado, who actually has a really handy calculator on their website that kind of tells you, if you type in what you're building, it'll tell you not only how many units you'd be required to put, but what your fee would be if you paid in lieu. So essentially what we did is we took a stab at creating an opportunity if the economics of a project wouldn't allow you to meet all of that affordable requirement on site, you would have an opportunity, just like with the payment in lieu of parking fund, to provide those resources to the city so that we can provide affordable housing in town. And so we use, there were two things we tried to tackle with that. The first is we wanted to make sure there were sort of, you didn't automatically make the affordable units the smallest ones in the building. So what we did is we said, you're going to take the average of the smallest unit and the largest unit, and that will tell you what your minimum affordable unit has to be. You can make them larger, but say you had a building that ranged from 500 square feet to 1,000, you could not make that because the average of those two is 500 square feet. You couldn't make a unit smaller than 500 square feet and call it the affordable one. So we wanted to protect against that, but we also wanted to create an opportunity to make it easy to quantify the fee. So essentially what we did is whatever that square footage would have been in all those units, you would take a look at the market rate of residential construction in that year, and there are guides from Construction Association of Michigan that provide sort of objective third-party reviews of what that cost is per square foot. Pretty straightforward calculation, and then you wind up with your payment in lieu fee. And I do believe the city attorney may have some other observations on some of the language of what we would like to do with the payment in lieu fund. One of the things that was the intent behind that was we wanted to not only deal with sort of publicly owned property like the scattered sites in the Housing Commission, or if there were, for example, property that we own that we want to dispose of, we want to be able to, just in the same way we'd use the parking fund to add capacity to the system, this would allow us to add affordable units throughout the city and manage those units as well. So we see it as an opportunity to partner with the Housing Commission as well and put some resources behind the cause of affordable housing.
Bravo for doing this. I'm really excited about it. But what I wanted to know is that is there a way in which we could include landlords in this at all? I mean, is there any sort of plan to include if we're going to be inclusive housing, and I get what we're doing here, but what about the landlords that have individual residences in this community too?
That's a great question. I think this is going to require sort of a team effort. One of the things, and Heather may be able to speak on this a little more, but one of the things that we're looking at is, for example, if there are landlords, there's the program Section 8. It's the HUD Section 8 program. It's a voucher program. But sometimes there's an issue, and this is one of the things that we want to look at potentially using this payment in lieu fund for, is if you can't, a Section 8 voucher may not be enough to get you a rental in Ferndale. So we may use this fund to fill that gap, to say, because the rents are climbing in Ferndale, and so even with that voucher, you may find that you still can't afford a rental here. So that's one way that we're going to work with that, and Heather, again, may be able to speak to that if you'd like to.
I think you said that beautifully. Too often we find our participants in our Housing Choice Voucher program struggle to find market rate rentals in this community in Ferndale, just because the rates are climbing. It's a very competitive market, so that would help us fill a gap and make sure that there's some accessibility there. So I think that's...
If I may, through the chair, to clarify though, that's not a for sure thing. We still need to explore that, right?
That's what phase 2 is about.
That's correct. I mean, essentially what this will do is it'll give us the groundwork to start putting this together and to be able, like, for example, Hayes Lemmers is a project with owner occupied, and so we haven't fully wrapped our heads around how do you apply affordable housing principles and how do you control that over time. Once that house sells, how do you control affordability? So this gives us the groundwork to start working on that. But phase 2, yes, would be to engage experts, to look deeper at best practice, and to actually sort of flesh it out and make sure it's aligned with best practice.
I'm trying to save you some phone calls tomorrow about how I can get help with rent. So.
Indeed.
I just want to clarify then, Jordan, to clarify that what we're focusing on tonight is our own city-owned properties or anything that has
new construction.
I was just going to say,
or
these
our
are city-owned
own incentives.
That's correct.
And then phase 2 is intended to be go off the city's control to move into some of these ideas. So the first one is we want to at least have any control through, as you get brownfield, any types of incentives, any property that we own has to follow this policy. And in the next phase, of which we're hoping to get the MEDC to help, is that MEDC?
Correct.
That's what you said? Is going to help us with that phase 2, which is everybody else.
Gotcha.
Great.
Through the chair, it's actually a little more sharp. It is city-owned or controlled, incentivized with a minimum of 25 units.
Yes.
So a smaller one would not apply.
Correct.
Through the chair?
Yes,
May I have a comment? I really appreciate you putting so much thoughtfulness into this policy, and getting it right is really critical, because this is people's lives, and really at the end of the day, for me, this is about taking care of the people who live in our community so that they can stay here in the community that they love, and that we want people who take care of us, of our dishwashers and waitresses and dental hygienists, to be able to live in the community. And with all the new developments going on right now, everybody knows that their value is going up, which is what we wanted after the financial crash. Everybody's happy that their housing prices go up, but that there's a tipping point where the rents start going up as well. And with, people don't know, we actually have a really big change from home ownership in Ferndale. We've had 11% increase in rentals in the last decade. So we're 40% home ownership, no, 60% home ownership and 40% rental. So we need something to, a critical and thoughtful policy at this time, and I think this really is about putting us off in that right direction, particularly with all the new developments being under construction, in the pipeline, and being proposed. So this helps staff have critical conversations with the developers about building for everybody, not building for everybody who can afford market rate only.
You're here.
I have a couple of questions to the chair. So over time, who manages this program? So let's say, for example, 5 years or 10 years out, because within the description it talks about 30-year period. So 10 years out, all of a sudden the landlord starts renting those units that were pardon?
No, go ahead.
That were at 25 or 35%. I can't remember the exact, what is it, 80%, 60%, 50%. All of a sudden, they become market rate. Who manages to make sure that 25% is maintained in that building?
That's a great question. There's two parts to it. Initially, what we're going to be doing, the short answer is this is what we see, the management of this is an evolving partnership between the CED department, the Ferndale Housing Commission. That said, we have mechanisms right now that we use to track that. So, for example, on rental units, it's fairly straightforward. Through the rental inspection process, we can hold the C of O as leverage to make sure that we'll get documentation to make sure that we substantiate the rental rates and to make sure that those terms are being honored in the short term. But frankly, that is something that phase 2 is going to really iron out, to make sure that we have management practices that make sense, that are effective, and that are resilient against staff turnover and things like that.
It'll be easy too during the time, especially for those that have an incentive. There's a lot of documentation they have to provide every year anyway to get their brownfield reimbursement. So we could put something in there at that point. And those typically go on for 20 to 30 years. So that will help a little bit, but we definitely will have to, that's a big part of phase 2.
All right. Great question.
My other question is, the payment in lieu, you referenced Boulder, Colorado?
Yeah.
Do they use that across the board, or is it just for brownfield or Oprah projects?
I'll double check to find out exactly. I believe it's just incentivized projects or city-owned land, but I'll double check and get that to you.
Because my question then leads to if it is a brownfield, like for example, if we have a project, it's 10 or 12 million in brownfield dollars. How do we know the developer isn't taking into a calculation to say, well, if I can get this much in brownfield, well, then I could pay X hundreds of thousands to reduce the amount of units that I have to be responsible for?
That's a good question. One thing about our brownfield process, we actually require whether they apply, because there's, without getting too far into the weeds, you can capture local taxes or school taxes. if you want to do the latter, as well as local taxes, you have to apply through the MEDC, and they have a pretty rigorous pro forma process. We make them fill out the MEDC pro forma, and so we get to see their numbers, even on the local level. So that would get teased out. They have to show us the numbers. They have to show us the gap. So they can't just apply for a brownfield because we want them to do affordable housing. They have to show us the gap in their financing that is created by those conditions. So that's functional obsolescence, and that's infrastructure things, environmental things. It's not. Affordable housing wouldn't be eligible, so they have to be able to substantiate in their numbers that they have legitimate claim for those incentives.
Okay, thank you.
Jordan, who is going to oversee and sort of manage the payment in lieu fund and how it's distributed and what it goes for and all of that kind of internal stuff?
That's a great question. That's another one I want to iron out in phase 2, but my sort of vision at this point, recognizing I'm not just making this in a vacuum, obviously, but the initial concept is we kind of see it as a partnership, again, between FHC and the city, sort of collaboratively deciding where's the affordable housing need. But again, that's sort of a process that we're hoping to lean on experts to be able to say, what is the best way to do this to ensure that, one of the big priorities that we've talked a lot about with Heather is making sure that as we do affordability, we don't just have it concentrated in one little pocket or two little pockets of the city, that it's sort of ubiquitous throughout the city. And we think that kind of partnership will help with that.
Okay. Because I believe, and I'm not an expert in this, but I believe in other communities, they've had to put money up front to help incentivize these developers to do this. We're obviously not doing this. So I guess my just broad question is, and you mentioned talking to the development community to some degree, how prohibitive do you think this will be, minus upfront incentives from the city for doing this? And then B, do you think this payment in lieu fund would eventually get large enough to be those kind of incentives, or would it go more for the more narrowly specific kinds of things that you've identified here?
Well, it's a little of all of the above, frankly. If you looked at the example that we provided, the 25-unit project, if I recall correctly, let's say you didn't round up like we want to, you'd get about $625,000 from a payment in lieu fee on that. And so that seems like a lot, but in the scheme of a development,
right,
especially when you're talking 16, 20 million, like, for example, 40999 apartments across from Credit Union 1, that's about a $16.1 million project. So that's $625,000 is a lot, but in the grand scheme, it's not. And so it could be a little of the above, but it's something that, again, that we're going to tease out with phase 2. In terms of the best way to do it. Now, it could be a situation where if there's a project that's incentivized with a brownfield, we may, we're projecting within a couple of years, and you're going to get a report at year end from the brownfield fund, that a revolving loan fund will probably have $100,000 or $200,000 in it within a year or two, depending on which projections you believe. That being said, that could be a situation where revolving loan fund maybe is more stringent when we decide to give it out. Maybe a 20-year TIF isn't such a big deal, but if you want money up front, you have to be giving us affordable housing. So I don't think, to answer the first part of the question, I don't think it's going to be prohibitive. Developers may groan about it, but at the end of the day, it's sort of a delicate negotiation where you know how far you can push, and that's why we make them fill out the pro forma so we can see exactly what's going on and we can have that conversation about trade-offs. And developers, frankly, have revealed themselves to be very open to those discussions once they kind of realize sort of the underpinnings of the policy.
But the payment in lieu fund, too, is only going to get so big. There are only so many properties available in Ferndale that you can generate a $625,000 payment in lieu from.
That's absolutely right.
Yeah.
So other than the city of Detroit, which obviously has adopted a policy, are there any other communities that you're aware of in Michigan that the development community even has experience with working with these kinds of ordinances?
I believe Traverse City and Grand Rapids. I'm more confident about Traverse City, but possibly Grand Rapids as well.
MML, so
Grand Rapids is looking at it too. What's happening is that since downtowns are now an exciting place to live again, these new developments are coming in and pricing out. They're getting developed at market rate, and they're pricing out for lower income, middle income people. So what happens is over time, like San Francisco, you have a downtown that is only affordable for the rich. And so what type of downtown do you really want your downtown to be? Yep. So to me, this is forward thinking, and with the amount of development we have right now, I feel like we're really in a prime position. And in my opinion, our internal, Jordan and Justin have put together a really nice set of tools here in order to negotiate well. And nationally, this is a challenge going all downtowns and cities across the U.S. because we're in a housing crisis. And so we're not introducing anything new to our developers who do development all over the United States to something that is new. So they know this is coming. They know the national challenge. And this is a way that a city can control, to some degree, a policy in place for new construction if you want city dollars to offset the cost of your development. So we have skin in the game.
I was just asking for other examples.
Well, it looks like-
I get the policy, the
Sorry.
idea behind the policy.
Well, once again, we're at the forefront, you know.
Looks like Grand Rapids
getting-
just took it up in November.
Yeah.
What's that?
Grand Rapids just took it up in
Just took it
November.
up in November? Okay.
So we can call them too, just to see what they actually approved.
Yeah,
Sounds like
that
many
would be
similar
great. I would
things.
just, the AMI, does that get reestablished once a year? Is that going to be a automatic adjusted?
Yes, it's pegged to it's pegged to census and Bureau of Labor Statistics. So like as those numbers get updated, we will update as well.
Yeah, we don't have to do that here.
Right, right.
That's part of the policy. Okay. Because I just wasn't sure if that was an automatic or if we would have to do that.
Yeah.
Cool. Excellent.
Through the chair, just as an FYI, I did the little math here about what is 30% of the AMIs. So for annual rent, for 27,000 of AMI, you're looking at approximately $675 monthly rent. 34,000 is $850, and 44,000 is about $1,100 approximately. So when you think about who has a salary and who are we really planning for, this gives a better indication of $675 in rent without utilities in many cases. So
It's still a lot of money.
Other questions?
No.
Or a motion?
I move that City Council approve the city's inclusive housing policy and put its provisions into immediate effect.
Support.
No, it's you. All right, moved by Pollock and supported by Lisa May. What is your timeline for phase two, though?
So we have a draft RFP that we're going to bring to you in January to make sure that it contains the things that you would want it to, that it hits the right targets, that it asks the right questions, and then assuming that it's kosher, we would like to release that RFP by the end of January, pick a contractor in February, and before the end of the fiscal year, if I can whip the contractor hard enough, we'll have phase two, but at least within, I would say, 6 months of contract execution.
Excited for phase two.
All right. Final questions, comments, or concerns?
just wanted to thank Heather for working with our team on this to make sure that we have a comprehensive look at all of our housing needs. So thank you.
Excellent. All right. Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Let's see. Councilmember Pollican.
Yes.
Piana.
Yes.
Leaks May.
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
And Mayor Coulter.
Yes. Thank you. That item's adopted. Appreciate it. All right. Moving on now to call to council. Chief Collins, anything for the good of the community from the police department this evening?
Just 2 quick updates, Your Honor. I'll let you know that we had 5 positions open in the police department. We have filled 3 of those as of today. 1 will start the police academy, the 4th in January. And the 5th, we ran out of people, so we will be restarting the hiring process yet again. The other update is that our body-worn cameras have arrived. The servers have arrived. Everything is here today. Tomorrow is the installation of all the back channel and Wi-Fi things, and then we'll have training on Wednesday. So we will be ready for deployment just after the 8th of January when the new law goes into effect.
Just to clarify, Chief, you're only deploying a few at a time, correct?
That's correct.
Just make sure that we all are aware of that.
Yep.
How many folks will be having that then?
We'll have 2 per platoon to start with, and then once we work out some of the bugs, we're right now labeling every officer's little spot for their download device, so it's all coming together now, so we're almost there. And lastly, I just wanted to say Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays to everybody in Deskin in the city.
Do you want to say anything about these?
Well, those are, that was Captain Palazzolo's first shot at the hats, and Those are water glasses. I'm sure everybody knows that, but that is our tradition that we passed on all these years, and that is a gift to the city council and the city and the folks that sit up there.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Chief.
Question.
Yes.
Chief, Wednesday you said there was training. What's the training involved?
The training will be involved, it's all new software, so for the command officers and the command staff, so they'll know how to utilize the new downloads and how to view it, how to take the video off the new server, working those types of kinks out. We'll also be looking at the redaction software, so we make sure that the folks that are responsible for that know how to use that equipment as well.
Okay. Hate to put you on the spot. Any chance I could attend that?
I don't see any reason why not.
Okay. I'd like to. This Wednesday.
It's this Wednesday,
Okay,
yeah.
great. Thank you.
Okay.
Chief Sullivan, anything from the fire department this evening? Any hats, glasses?
Sweatshirts?
Negative. We thought you'd be appreciative of fire protection all by itself. We too are in recruitment phase. We just recently had a senior firefighter and 2 engineers pull their retirement. And then Fire Marshal Batten put out feelers because he'd have to go by age in 2019, and the state sucked him up with all his experience in that, so he'll be starting with the state of Michigan on January 3rd, so we just lost our fire marshal. So our recruitment is we have more holes than we're filling. We're trying to fill the 3 spots right now with the candidates we have. We're trying to catch up with that, and then as Chief Collins said, we'll be going right back to recruitment. We're already putting out the notice for it and starting the process. This time around, we'll be asking for paramedics, and if you have Fire 1 and 2, that's great. You get some extra credit there, but if you don't, we're willing to send you to the Fire Academy because we're not seeing a lot of great candidates that we feel are a good fit for Ferndale right now. But Justin is busting ass. Excuse me.
Oh, Jesus.
All right. Thank you.
I know.
Hey. Well, that's a good segue. Justin, anything from the HR this evening? All right.
I do want to acknowledge, though, that we've just, our new HR director starts January 8th, and it is correct. Justin has been in the department for 2.5 years now, and he picked up so much for Jenny, much more than we ever anticipated. Our entire team is indebted to the gaps that he filled, and he's done an incredible job, so we're really happy to have him on our team. And Dan J.C. will be starting on Monday, January 8th.
And on behalf of the city attorney and myself, I want to object to another Dan being brought into the
I
mix.
understand. I'm sorry. So it's not another J. So
I was just okay. No more J's. That's all right.
I had to pick and choose, Dan.
It's all right. I could. Lorena, anything from the recreation department this evening? All right. Jordan, anything else from community and economic development? All right. Joe, anything else from the assistant city manager's office? How about finance? We did the audit obviously earlier today, but anything else? No? Good. Communications and community engagement? Nothing this evening. Wow. Carlos, how could I miss you? You're bright orange and tall. You guys have had an interesting couple of weeks at DPW, correct?
Very interesting.
And
yeah.
don't think we don't appreciate it, but yeah, tell the folks what the latest from DPW.
Well, as you all know, the last couple weeks, and really last week has been really busy for DPW with dealing with numerous snowfalls last week, ranging from 1 to 2 inches, and the major one hitting us with 7.5 inches. Kept us pretty busy. When we experience heavy snowfalls like that, or long duration snowfalls, it's pretty taxing. Crews work extended periods of time to make sure everything gets done. Major road secondaries, parking lots, and sidewalks to city buildings. Normally when that's done, it's morning time. So for the morning commute, it's pretty clear. So and at that point, we refocus to local streets, and that's where the plow trucks will stay until it's done. Luckily, this week is the forecast is not not looking like the snow we got last week. So with the higher temps, trucks are out re-pushing the locals, pushing back the snow banks. In the early morning hours, crews are coming in to haul the snow out of the downtown areas. So
Were you able to complete the leaf pickup before the snow hit?
No, actually, on that Saturday, we were finishing the last street in the Dales, all within the same hour. We finished the leaf collection in the Dales and switched over all within the same hour. Went right to snow plowing, all in the same hour, all in the same day. So personally, I'm pretty fortunate for the crew we have down there. The men and women, they work really hard to get stuff done when it needs to happen.
We appreciate it. Thank you.
We appreciate you guys.
Anything else from DPW this week?
That's enough for right now.
That's plenty. Thank you. Am I missing anybody? I don't think so. I'm not going to put the library director on the spot because she didn't get up voluntarily. Barb, anything from the city clerk's office this evening? Thank you for being here with us for Under the Weather Marnie this evening.
I was going to say, just to wish Marnie getting better. And Merry Christmas
Get well
to everybody.
soon, Marnie. Thank you. April, anything else from the city manager's office?
Yeah, just a few. A friendly reminder that the next 2 weeks, City Hall is going to experience different hours based on the Christmas holiday. Both next week and the week after, City Hall will only be open on Wednesday and Thursday of both of those weeks, to speak the way that the holiday falls on the weekend. Monday and Tuesday, it's closed in observance of Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and then the following week, same procedure for New Year's Eve and New Year's Day. So just if anybody needs to come in, it's Wednesday and Thursday of both weeks. However, please note that most things that you need to pay for can be done online right now 24/7.
Good. Thank you. Dan Chris.
Nothing this evening.
All right. Councilman Martin.
I just want to wish everyone a happy holiday season and be safe.
Thank you. Councilwoman Lee Smay.
The same. I just want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas, Happy Holiday Season, Happy New Year, and we'll see you in January.
Excellent. Councilman Pollock.
I have nothing other than wishing everyone a wonderful holiday and have a very safe New Year. And see you in January for another 4 years.
That's correct. Mayor Pro Tem Piana.
Just one thing. I wanted to follow up on the housing discussion, but on a different angle. Heather Van Pooker from the Ferndale Housing Commission and myself were invited to do a regional stakeholder discussion to identify trends and opportunities for future regional suburban needs on housing for a report called Southeast Michigan Housing Futures, and we've done 2 sessions together with the Urban Institute, and they will be producing a very large report next year. I know Council, when we first started exploring our inclusive housing policy, there was discussion, particularly from Councilman Dan Martin, where we wanted to take a look at a regional housing approach. And so I feel like we've started that in this way by participating to get the data and provide data so that we can bring it back and take a look where we fit into the regional picture from a Ferndale housing perspective. So just wanted to say I'm really excited to be a part of it. And then I just wanted to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year's. And please do not drink and drive over the holiday. I know there's lots of spirits and great places to eat and stuff, but please think of calling a friend or calling Uber or Lyft to get home safely. And have a Merry Christmas, and I love working with all of you. You guys are amazing, and I look forward to an awesome, productive 2018.
Excellent. And on the holiday note, I just remind people, shop local. Most of those dollars stay in our local community. We have a lot of great shops and stores here. If you want to see the complete list, go to the DDA's website. I know that those are listed there. Reminder of what Cindy said, that this Thursday night you can shop late, including at the Rust Belt Market. So it's really important not only to get great local stuff, but to support the local economy. And with that, have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, and we'll see you next year. Thank you.
No.
But
I'd like to move that we go into closed session but to consider the periodic personnel evaluation of a public officer, employee, staff member, or individual agent if the person requests a closed hearing, which they have, pursuant to MCL 15.268(8)A.
Support.
All right. Thank you for reminding me. We need a roll call to go into closed session. Barb?
Hold on 1 second.
It's been moved by Martin and supported by Polika.
Okay, council members. Let's start with Leaks May.
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Polika?
Yes.
Piana?
Yes.
Mayor Coulter?
Yes, thank you. And we are now in closed session. We'll reconvene in 5 minutes.
Yeah, thanks. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah, no, thank you for